The morning sun painted the sky orange above Earth Defense Force headquarters when Captain Lee Minho received the message that would change everything. The emergency signal came from the deep space communication array, and the red warning lights told him this was not a drill. He rushed to the command center where Admiral Park was already waiting with a face full of worry. "Captain, we have a problem," the Admiral said, handing him a datapad. "The first contact mission on Kepler 442b has gone completely wrong. Ambassador Vextar of the Zalani Empire sent this message 3 hours ago, but it took time to reach us through the quantum relays." Minho read the message and felt his blood turn cold. The words were simple but terrifying. Urgent assistance required. Humans are not what they seem. Civilian population displays warrior class behavior. Request immediate evacuation. All species advised to maintain distance from human DLIGATIO. "And what does this mean, Sir?" Minho asked, but he already feared the answer. The Zalani were known across the galaxy as careful, peaceful beings who never exaggerated threats. If they were scared of humans, something had gone very wrong. The Admiral pulled up a holographic display showing the planet where the first contact was supposed to happen. Kepler 442b was a beautiful world with blue oceans and green forests. The perfect place for species to meet and begin peaceful relationships. Dr. Park Gina was leading our science team there. She was supposed to study the local plants and animals while our diplomats talked with the Zalanabit. Something went wrong, the Admiral continued. "We lost contact with the team 6 hours ago. The last message we got was from Dr. Park herself. She said they were under attack from local wildlife and that help was on the way." Then nothing. Minho studied the planet data. The wildlife reports showed some dangerous creatures, but nothing that a trained expedition team could not handle. The humans sent there were scientists and diplomats, not soldiers. They had basic training, but they were not warriors. So why were the Zalani so afraid? "Sir, permission to take a rescue team to Kepler 442b. Minho said, "I need to find out what happened to our people and why the aliens are calling them dangerous." The Admiral nodded, but his expression remained worried. "Captain, there is something else. The Zalani message was not just sent to us. It went to the entire Galactic Council. Every species in known space now believes that humans are some kind of threat. We need answers fast before this becomes a diplomatic disaster." 2 hours later, Captain Minho was aboard the fast ship Bright Star with his best crew. The journey to Kepler 442b would take 3 days through hyperspace, but every minute felt like an hour. The crew talked quietly among themselves, wondering what they would find. Some worried about the science team, others wondered if this was all some kind of mistake. During the journey, Minho studied everything he could about the mission. Dr. Park Gina was one of Earth's best xenobiologists. She had spent years studying alien life forms and was known for her gentle approach to new species. Professor Kim Dae-ho was a botanist who loved flowers more than anything else in the universe. He had never hurt a living thing in his life. Dr. Han Suyang was a geologist who collected rocks like other people collected stamps. These were not dangerous people, Minho thought. They were the kind of humans who represented the best of Earth, peaceful, curious, always ready to help others. If the Zalani were afraid of them, then something very strange had happened on that planet. The ship dropped out of hyperspace near Kepler 442b and immediately detected the Zalani vessel. It was moving away from the planet at maximum speed. Minho tried to contact them, but Ambassador Vextar would only send text messages. He refused to talk directly. Captain Lee, the message said, "We are grateful for your arrival, but we must warn you. The humans on the planet's surface are not what they appear to be. We came here expecting to meet peaceful scientists. Instead, we found something that terrifies us beyond description." "What? Did you see?" Minho typed back. The response took several minutes to arrive. "We were attacked by the planet's predators, large, savage beasts that hunt in packs. Your scientist, Dr. Park, was with us along with Professor Kim and Dr. Han. When the creatures attacked, we thought we would all die, but then something impossible happened." Minho waited, reading the next message with growing confusion. "Your peaceful botanist, Professor Kim, who had been showing us flower samples, suddenly became something else. His eyes changed, his body language shifted, and he became a killer. He fought 3 of the beasts with nothing but a broken metal rod from our equipment. He moved like a trained assassin, but he was supposed to be a plant scientist." The message continued. Dr. Park, who had been gently cataloging soil samples, grabbed a rock and threw it with deadly accuracy at a creature's head. Dr. Han used her geological hammer to fight off 2 more beasts. All 3 of your civilians became warriors in seconds. They saved our lives, but we realized something terrible about your species. Captain Minho felt his heart racing as he read the final part of the message. There is no difference between your civilians and your military. Every human carries a warrior inside them. This is unknown in galactic civilization. We have our peaceful citizens and our trained soldiers. The Krix have workers and warriors. The Delph have scholars and defenders. But humans, every single one of them can become deadly when needed. This makes your entire species a potential threat. The communication ended, and Minho stared at the screen, trying to understand what he had just read. Was it possible that humans were different from other species in ways they had never realized? He had always thought that humans were just another intelligent race. Ready to join the galactic community, the ship landed on Kepler 442b, and Minho led his team to the coordinates where the first contact was supposed to happen. They found the camp still set up but empty. The Zelani had left, quickly leaving behind some of their equipment. There were signs of a fight, torn fabrics, scattered supplies, and what looked like claw marks on the trees. Dr. Park Gina emerged from the forest as they approached, and Minho was surprised to see her looking completely normal. She smiled and waved as if nothing had happened. Behind her came Professor Kim, carrying a sample bag full of interesting plants. Dr. Han followed with her geological tools, clean and organized. Captain Minho, Dr. Park said with obvious relief, "We were wondering when someone would come looking for us. The Zelani left suddenly yesterday, without much explanation. I hope nothing was wrong." Minho looked at these 3 peaceful scientists and tried to imagine them as the deadly fighters the Zelani had described. Dr. Park was a small woman who spoke softly and loved all living things. Professor Kim was older, with gray hair and gentle hands that handled plants like precious treasures. Dr. Han was quiet and thoughtful, someone who saw beauty in rocks and minerals. What happened during the attack? Minho asked. Dr. Park looked confused for a moment, then her face cleared. "Oh, you mean when those pack hunters showed up yesterday? Yes, that was exciting. The local predators are quite impressive, much larger than we expected from the initial surveys." She spoke about the attack as if it had been an interesting scientific observation. Professor Kim nodded along, adding details about how the creatures moved and hunted. Dr. Han mentioned the geological features that had helped them during the fight, but none of them seemed to understand why the Zelani had been so frightened. They described their actions during the attack as normal, reasonable responses to danger. They did not see themselves as warriors or killers, just as people who did what was necessary to survive. Captain Minho realized that the Galactic Council's first crisis with humanity had begun. The aliens saw something in human nature that humans themselves did not recognize. They saw a species where every individual could switch from peaceful to deadly in an instant, where there was no clear line between civilian and soldier. As he prepared to return to Earth with the science team, Minho knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had spent millions of years developing civilizations where peaceful beings and warriors were separate groups. But humans had evolved differently, and that difference was about to shake the foundations of galactic society. The rescue mission was over. But the real challenge was just starting. How do you explain to an entire galaxy that your species does not fit their understanding of how intelligent life should work? How do you prove that humans deserve a place among the stars when other species see them as an existential threat? Captain Minho looked up at the alien stars and wondered if humanity would ever find its place among them. The answer would depend on whether the galaxy could learn to accept a species that refused to be just one thing, a species where every civilian was also a potential protector, and every protector was also a person who valued peace above all else. Inspector Quindle of the Aldery race had studied thousands of species across the galaxy, but she had never encountered a puzzle like humanity. The Galactic Council had chosen her for this investigation because the Aldery were known for their fairness and scientific approach to understanding other cultures. She arrived on Earth expecting to find a planet divided between harmless civilians and dangerous military forces. Instead, she discovered something that would challenge everything she thought she knew about intelligent life. The first place Inspector Quindle visited was a human school in the city of Seoul. She wanted to observe what the humans called their civilian population and see if they were truly as peaceful as they claimed. The school was full of young humans learning basic knowledge, and their teacher was a woman named Choi Yuna, who seemed to represent everything gentle about human nature. Choi Yuna was small and soft-spoken with kind eyes that lit up when she helped her students understand difficult concepts. She taught the young humans to read and write using patience that impressed even the inspector. The children clearly loved their teacher, and she treated each one with careful attention. The inspector watched for hours and saw nothing that suggested this woman could be dangerous. After the school visit, Inspector Quindle went to observe other human civilians. She watched Timon, a baker who spent his days creating beautiful cakes and pastries for celebrations. His hands worked with delicate precision as he decorated each cake with flowers made of sugar. His face showed pure joy when customers smiled at his creations. This was clearly a being devoted to bringing happiness to others. Next, she visited a medical facility where she met Han Fan Suyang, a nurse who cared for sick and injured humans. The inspector watched as Han Suyang worked through a long shift checking on patients, giving medicine and comforting those who were in pain. Her dedication to healing was obvious, and she never showed impatience even with the most difficult patients. Inspector Quindle began to think that the reports about humans had been exaggerated. These civilians seemed no different from peaceful beings on any other world. They were focused on creation rather than destruction, on helping rather than harming, on building rather than breaking. The inspector started to prepare a report that would recommend removing humans from the dangerous species list, but then something happened that changed everything. Inspector Quindle was visiting the school again when the ground began to shake violently. The building started to crack and pieces of ceiling fell down. The inspector recognized this as what humans called an earthquake, and she knew the building was about to collapse. She expected panic and chaos as the human civilians fled in terror. Instead, she witnessed something that would haunt her dreams for years. The gentle teacher Choi Yuna did not run or scream. Instead, her entire demeanor changed in an instant. Her voice became sharp and commanding as she organized the children into evacuation groups. She moved with military precision, checking every room to make sure no child was left behind. When a piece of ceiling blocked the main exit, she did not hesitate to climb through the rubble and clear the path with her bare hands. The inspector watched in shock as this woman, who had been softly teaching children about flowers, suddenly became a tactical leader, moving with purpose and determination that would have impressed any military commander. But what terrified the inspector most was how natural it seemed. The teacher had not been trained for this moment, yet she knew exactly what to do. The transformation was not limited to the teacher. The inspector saw the baker Timon abandon his shop and rush to the school. When he arrived, he immediately began pulling away heavy debris with strength that seemed impossible for someone who spent his days decorating cakes. His delicate hands that had been creating sugar flowers minutes before now tore through concrete and steel to reach trapped children. The nurse Han Suyang appeared with medical supplies and began treating injured people in the wreckage. She performed emergency surgery using broken glass as scalpels and torn cloth as bandages. Her gentle bedside manner was replaced by cold efficiency as she worked to save lives under impossible conditions. Inspector Quindle watched 3 humans who had been peaceful civilians transform into something else entirely. In moments of crisis, they became protectors, rescuers, warriors, whatever the situation required. But what terrified her most was how quickly they switched back once the emergency was over. Once all the children were safe and the injured were treated, the 3 humans returned to their normal selves. Choi Yuna went back to being a gentle teacher, concerned about whether her students were traumatized. Timon returned to his bakery and began making food for the rescue workers. Han Suyang continued her medical duties as if nothing extraordinary had happened. They did not celebrate their heroic actions or seem changed by the violence they had been capable of. They simply returned to their daily lives as if transforming from civilian to warrior and back again was the most natural thing in the world. Inspector Quindle realized that she needed to understand this phenomenon better. She arranged to meet with Dr. Kang Min-soo, a human psychologist who studied the behavior of his own species. The meeting took place in a quiet office where Dr. Kang tried to explain what the inspector had witnessed. Dr. Kang told her that humans had evolved differently from other species. Most intelligent life in the galaxy had developed in stable environments where specialization was possible. Some individuals could focus entirely on peaceful activities while others handled any threats that arose, but humans had evolved on what galactic scientists called a death world. Earth was a planet where survival meant constant adaptation. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and climate changes had shaped human evolution over millions of years. The humans who survived were those who could adapt quickly to any threat, whether it was finding food during famines or fighting off predators during attacks. Dr. Kong explained that human brains had developed the ability to instantly shift between different modes of thinking. In peaceful times, humans could focus on creation, learning, and cooperation. But when danger appeared, their minds could switch to survival mode, where they became capable of anything necessary to protect themselves and others. This was not training or conditioning, Dr. Kong emphasized. It was built into human DNA. Every human carried the genetic memory of millions of years of survival on a hostile world. They were born with the ability to be both gentle and fierce, protective and deadly, creative and destructive. Inspector Quindle asked if this meant that humans were naturally violent. Dr. Kang shook his head and explained that humans preferred peace above all else, but they had learned that sometimes violence was necessary to protect what they loved. They did not enjoy fighting, but they would fight without hesitation if it meant saving others. The inspector realized that the Galactic Council's classification system was completely inadequate for understanding humans. They had assumed that intelligence meant specialization, that advanced species would naturally separate their peaceful and violent members. But humans proved that evolution could take a different path. In most species, you were either a creator or a destroyer, either a protector or someone who needed protection. But humans were complete beings capable of both sides of existence. They could build hospitals and tear down enemies, create art and destroy threats, teach children, and fight monsters. Inspector Quindle understood now why the Zelani had been so frightened. They had encountered a species that did not fit into any known category. Every human was potentially both the most peaceful and the most dangerous being they might ever meet. As she prepared her report for the Galactic Council, Inspector Quindle knew that her findings would create chaos. Some species would see humans as the ultimate threat, others might view them as the perfect allies. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same once it truly understood what humans were. The inspector looked out at the human city below and watched millions of beings going about their daily lives, each one capable of incredible gentleness and terrible violence. Often in the same moment, she wondered if the galaxy was ready to accept a species that refused to be just one thing. Her report would recommend that humans be classified not as a threat but as something entirely new in galactic civilization. They were a species that had achieved perfect balance between creation and destruction, between peace and war, between love and the willingness to fight for those they loved. But she knew that understanding humans and accepting them were two very different things. The real test would come when the galaxy had to decide whether humanity's unique nature was a gift or a curse that threatened the foundations of civilized space. Admiral Zorkith of the Thrakari Empire was not convinced by Inspector Quindle's report. The Thrakari were warriors who had built their civilization on strength and combat. They respected only those who could prove themselves in battle. Admiral Zorkith believed that humans were either hiding their true warrior nature or were simply lucky civilians who had stumbled through a few dangerous situations. The Admiral proposed a test to the Galactic Council. If humans were truly as adaptable and dangerous as the reports claimed, then they should be able to prove it in controlled combat. The test would be simple and fair. Select typical human civilians with no military training and see how they performed against trained Thrakari warriors. The Council agreed to the test. Despite protests from several peaceful species, they chose a neutral world called Nexus Prime, where the challenge would take place under galactic law. Both sides would be given basic survival equipment, and the contest would continue until one side surrendered or was defeated. The humans selected for the test were exactly what the Council considered typical civilians. Beiji Wu worked as a librarian in a quiet university, spending her days organizing books and Helping students with research, Shin Kyung-ho was an accountant who managed financial records for a small business. Yoo Hae-jin was an artist who painted landscapes and taught art to children. Chun Woo-sik was a mechanic who repaired household appliances and vehicles. None of these humans had any military training. They had never been in combat situations, and they had never killed anything larger than an insect. The Thrakari warriors chosen for the test were elite soldiers who had trained for decades. In the art of war, they were larger, stronger, and more experienced than the humans in every measurable way. The test began at dawn on Nexus Prime. Both teams were given basic survival gear, including water, food containers, simple tools, and basic medical supplies. No weapons were provided beyond what could be found or made from natural materials. The goal was simple survival and capture of the opposing team. Admiral Zorkith expected the contest to end quickly. He had seen the human civilians, and they looked soft and unprepared. The librarian seemed more interested in the local plant life than in preparing for battle. The accountant was making calculations in a notebook. The artist was sketching the landscape. The mechanic was examining the terrain with curious eyes. But something strange happened. As soon as the contest officially began, the four humans seemed to transform before his eyes. Their casual behavior disappeared and was replaced by focused intensity. They did not panic or show fear. Instead, they immediately began working together with a coordination that seemed impossible for people who had just met the admiral. Watched through surveillance equipment as the humans spread out across the testing area. The librarian, Bei Jiwoo, used her knowledge of architecture and structural engineering to identify weak points in the rocky terrain. She began setting traps using her understanding of physics and materials. The accountant Shin Kyung-ho started calculating angles, trajectories, and force measurements, turning simple rocks into precisely aimed projectiles. The artist Yoo Hae-jin revealed an unexpected talent for understanding anatomy and movement. She could predict where the Thrakari warriors would move and how they would react to different situations. The mechanic Chun Woo-sik began building improvised tools and weapons from scrap materials scattered around the testing area. What disturbed Admiral Zorkith most was how the humans fought. They did not use conventional military tactics or traditional combat strategies. Instead, they fought like intelligent predators who understood their environment and their enemies. They used deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare in ways that confused the trained Thrakari warriors. The first Thrakari warrior was taken down when he triggered one of Bei Jiwoo's traps. A carefully balanced pile of rocks fell on him when he passed through what appeared to be a safe passage. The librarian had used her knowledge of engineering to create a trigger system that would make any military engineer proud. The second warrior fell to Shin Kyung-ho's calculated rock throwing. The accountant had spent hours studying the trajectory and force needed to strike specific points on Thrakari armor. His mathematical precision allowed him to hit weak spots that even experienced warriors would have trouble targeting. The third warrior was defeated by Yoo Hae-jin's understanding of anatomy. The artist had studied the movement patterns of the Thrakari and knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum pain with minimum effort. She used pressure points and nerve clusters that the warrior did not even know existed. The fourth warrior was captured by Chun Woo-sik's improvised devices. The mechanic had built snares and restraints from scattered materials that held the warrior without causing permanent injury. His understanding of mechanical principles allowed him to create tools that worked perfectly despite being made from random objects. But what truly amazed Admiral Zorkith was how the humans worked together. They communicated without words, coordinating their actions. Like a pack of wolves hunting together, when one human was threatened, the others immediately moved to protect them. When one was injured, the others became more dangerous, not less. The Thrakari warriors, despite their superior training and equipment, found themselves completely outmatched. They were fighting an enemy that did not follow any recognizable pattern. The humans seemed to anticipate every move and counter every strategy. They fought with desperation and determination that overcame any advantage in size or strength. After 6 hours of combat, the Thrakari warriors were forced to surrender. They had been defeated not by superior soldiers but by ordinary civilians who refused to accept defeat. The humans had won through intelligence, adaptability, and the absolute refusal to give up. Admiral Zorkith was forced to admit that his understanding of warfare had been challenged. The humans had not fought like trained warriors. They had fought like something else entirely, beings who could become whatever the situation required. They were not soldiers pretending to be civilians or civilians pretending to be soldiers. They were complete beings who could access both peaceful and violent capabilities as needed. After the test, Admiral Zorketh met with the human participants. He expected to find hardened warriors who had finally revealed their true nature. Instead, he found the same gentle civilians who had started the test. The librarian was back to being interested in books and learning. The accountant was organizing his notes. The artist was sketching the sunset. The mechanic was examining the improvised tools he had built. They did not boast about their victory or seem changed by the violence they had been capable of. They simply returned to their normal interests, as if the battle had been just another problem to solve. They showed no bloodlust or desire for further combat. They were ready to return to their peaceful lives. This transformation disturbed Admiral Zorketh more than any display of military might could have. These humans could switch between peaceful and violent modes instantly and completely. They did not carry the psychological scars that warriors usually bore from combat. They did not seem to need time to recover from the stress of battle. The Admiral realized that humans represented something completely new in galactic civilization. They were not a warrior species that had learned to be peaceful. They were not a peaceful species that had learned to fight. They were something that had never existed before, a species where every individual was complete, capable of both creation and destruction, love and war, gentleness and ruthlessness. His report to the Galactic Council would recommend that humans be classified as a unique form of life that did not fit into any existing category. They were not more dangerous than other species, but they were dangerous in a completely different way. Every human was potentially both the most peaceful and the most deadly being in the galaxy. Admiral Zorketh looked at the four humans as they prepared to return to Earth and wondered what this meant for the future of galactic civilization. The humans had proven that they could fight and win against trained warriors, but they had also proven that they preferred peace above all else. The question was whether the galaxy could accept a species that refused to be categorized, a species that challenged every assumption about how intelligent life should develop. The test had been designed to reveal human nature, but it had revealed something much more important. It had shown that the galaxy's understanding of civilization itself might be flawed. As the humans boarded their transport ship, Admiral Zorketh realized that the real test was just beginning. The galaxy would have to decide whether humanity's unique nature was a threat to be eliminated or an evolution to be celebrated. The answer would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of all intelligent life in the galaxy. Ambassador Shinjisu stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Council, with humanity's future hanging in the balance. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all trying to understand what humans truly were. The recent test had proven that humans were capable of incredible violence, but it had also raised more questions than it answered. Ambassador Chun had requested this special session to share something that no alien species had ever heard: the complete history of human evolution and development. She believed that understanding where humans came from would help the galaxy understand what humans were and what they could become. The ambassador began with a simple statement that would shock many species. In the chamber, humans did not evolve on a peaceful world like most intelligent species. Earth was what galactic scientists called a death world, where survival meant constant adaptation to deadly threats. She activated a holographic display showing Earth's violent history. The planet had experienced multiple ice ages that covered most of the surface in deadly cold, massive volcanic eruptions that blocked the sun for years. Asteroid impacts that destroyed entire ecosystems, climate changes that happened so quickly that most species could not adapt. Ambassador Chun explained that most intelligent species in the galaxy had evolved in stable environments where specialization was possible. When your world was safe, you could afford to have some individuals focus entirely on peaceful activities while others handled any rare threats that might arise. But Earth had never been safe. She told the council about the predators that had shaped human evolution: saber-toothed cats that could kill with a single bite, cave bears that were larger and stronger than any human, packs of wolves that hunted together with deadly efficiency, giant crocodiles that waded in rivers and lakes, poisonous snakes that could kill with a single strike. But Humans were not just prey, Ambassador Chun continued, they were also hunters who had learned to take down creatures much larger than themselves. They had developed tools and strategies to hunt mammoth, bison, and other massive animals. This dual existence as both hunter and hunted had created a species that understood both fear and aggression. The ambassador shared stories from human history that illustrated this dual nature. She told them about teacher Pak Jie, who lived during one of Earth's great wars. During the day she taught children how to read and write, protecting their innocence and helping them learn about beauty and knowledge. But at night she fought enemy soldiers who threatened her students using the same hands that had been teaching children to hold weapons. She described Dr. Lee Sang-min, who performed surgery on wounded soldiers while bombs exploded around him. His medical knowledge allowed him to save lives, but it also taught him exactly where to strike to end them. His healing hands could repair damaged bodies or destroy them, depending on what the situation required. Ambassador Chun spoke of Farmer Nam Gwan, who grew food to feed refugees displaced by war. He understood how to nurture life from the soil and create abundance from nothing, but when enemy forces threatened his crops and the people who depended on them, he took up weapons to defend them. The same knowledge that helped him grow food helped him understand terrain and tactics. The council began to understand that these were not contradictions in human nature, but examples of how humans had evolved to be complete beings. Every human skill could be used for creation or destruction depending on the circumstances. The ability to understand anatomy could heal or harm. The knowledge of chemistry could create medicine or poison. The understanding of engineering could build bridges or destroy. The Ambassador Chun explained that humans had never developed the luxury of specialization that other species enjoyed on peaceful world. Species could afford to have individuals who were purely peaceful and others who were purely violent. But on Earth, everyone had to be capable of both. A human who could not fight would not survive long enough to create anything. A human who could not create would have nothing worth fighting for. Ambassador showed the council examples of human cities that had been built, destroyed, and rebuilt countless times. Humans had learned that everything they created might be destroyed by natural disasters, wars, or other threats, so they had developed the ability to be both builders and survivors, creators and fighters. She told them about the human concept of the warrior poet, individuals who could write beautiful literature and also lead armies in battle, about scientists, soldiers who could discover new laws of physics and also develop weapons, about artist fighters who could create masterpieces and also defend their communities. The council began to realize that what they had seen as a contradiction was actually perfect balance. Humans were not a species divided against itself, but a species that had achieved complete integration. Every human carried within them the capacity for both civilization and survival, but this understanding brought new concerns. Ambassador Chun acknowledged these fears. Some species worried that humans would be too unpredictable to work with. Others feared that human adaptability would make them impossible to control. A few suggested that humans might be too dangerous to allow into galactic society. The ambassador addressed these concerns directly by explaining human values. Despite their capacity for violence, humans had always preferred peace. They had developed complex philosophies about when violence was justified and when it was wrong. They had created art and literature that celebrated love, cooperation, and understanding. She told the council that humans had never conquered or enslaved other species, despite having the capability to do so. When humans had encountered other intelligent life, they had always attempted communication and cooperation first. Violence was always the last resort, used only when all other options had failed. Ambassador Chen shared examples of human peacekeepers who had stopped conflicts between other species, human diplomats who had negotiated treaties that prevented wars, human scientists who had shared their knowledge freely with other worlds, human artists who had created works that celebrated the diversity of galactic life. The ambassador concluded her presentation with a simple truth about human nature. Humans were not more violent than other species, but they were violent in a different way. They did not see violence and peace as opposites, but as different tools that could be used to protect what they valued most. She explained that human capacity for violence came from their capacity for love. Humans fought not because they enjoyed fighting, But because they were willing to do anything to protect those they cared about, a human parent would become deadly to protect their children. A human teacher would become a warrior to defend their students. A human doctor would kill to save their patients. The council sat in stunned silence as they processed this information. They had spent days trying to understand whether humans were too dangerous to accept into galactic society, but Ambassador Chin had shown them that the question was backwards. The real question was whether galactic society was complete enough to benefit from what humans could offer. Humans represented a new form of evolution where survival and civilization were not separate things, but parts of the same whole. They had achieved something that no other species had managed: perfect balance between creation and destruction, between peace and the willingness to fight for peace. As the session ended, Ambassador Chun knew that the Council would need time to process what they had learned. Some species would fear what humans represented, others would see the value in human adaptability. But all of them would have to decide whether the galaxy was ready for a species that refused to be just one thing. The future of human galactic citizenship would depend on whether other species could accept that evolution could take many paths, and that humans had chosen a path that made them complete beings, capable of anything the universe might require. Ambassador Chun looked out at the assembled representatives and wondered if they understood the gift that humanity offered. The galaxy was full of unknowns and threats. A species that could adapt to anything might be exactly what galactic civilization needed to survive and thrive among the stars. The revelation about humanity's true nature sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. Within weeks of Ambassador Chun's presentation, the unity of the Galactic Council began to fracture as different species realized what human adaptability meant for their own civilization. Some saw opportunity, while others saw existential threat, but none could ignore the implications of a species where every individual was potentially both creator and destroyer. The militant Thrakari Empire was the first to break ranks. Admiral Zorkith approached the human embassy with a proposal that horrified the peaceful species. The Thrakari wanted to hire human mercenaries to fight their battles. They had witnessed human combat effectiveness and believed that a small number of human soldiers could defeat much larger traditional armies. The Thrakari offered incredible wealth and territory in exchange for human military service. They promised that humans would be treated as honored allies and given positions of command in Thrakari fleets. Admiral Zorkith argued that this was the natural role for humans in galactic society, to serve as the ultimate warriors that other species could never become. But the peaceful Aldari had the opposite reaction. Inspector Quindle's report had convinced her people that humans represented an abomination that threatened the natural order of civilization. The Aldari had spent millions of years creating a society where violence was nearly extinct. They saw human dual nature as a contamination that could destroy everything they had built. The Aldari proposed that humans should be quarantined on their home world to prevent their dangerous adaptability from spreading to other species. They argued that allowing humans to interact with other civilizations would inevitably lead to corruption and conflict. The Aldari wanted to build a force field around the entire Sol system. The insectoid Krix had their own concerns. Their entire civilization was built on rigid caste systems where each individual had a specific role determined at birth. Workers could not become warriors, thinkers could not become builders. The idea of beings who could change their function based on circumstances terrified the Krix leadership. The Krix feared that human concepts of adaptability would corrupt their carefully ordered society. If Krix workers learned that they could become warriors if needed, their entire civilization might collapse. The Krix proposed that humans should be classified as a Class X biological hazard and eliminated before they could spread their chaotic influence. The aquatic Delph had different worries, but equally serious ones. Their society was built on careful balance and precise calculations. Where every action had predictable consequences, human unpredictability threatened to destabilize their mathematical approach to civilization. The Delph could not understand how to plan for the future when dealing with beings who could become anything. War seemed inevitable as the different factions argued over what to do about humanity. Some species formed alliances to capture and control humans. Others banded together to defend against the human threat. Still others tried to remain neutral but found themselves forced to choose sides. Captain Lee Min-ho found himself at the center of the growing crisis. The Earth Defense Force was receiving contradictory messages from across the galaxy. Some species offered friendship and alliance while others delivered ultimatums and threats. The human military was preparing for the possibility of galactic war while diplomats worked desperately to prevent it. The situation became more complex when reports arrived of human actions throughout the galaxy. These reports showed the dual nature that so frightened other species, but also demonstrated why humans might be valuable allies rather than dangerous enemies on the mining world of Kepler 1649c. Human engineer Ro Min-jae had prevented a catastrophic reactor meltdown that would have killed thousands of alien workers. The reactor had been damaged by seismic activity and all safety systems had failed. Automated repair systems could not reach the damaged core because of radiation levels that would kill any known species, but Ro Min-jae had entered the reactor chamber knowing that the radiation would probably kill him. He had fought his way through automated defense systems that had been designed to prevent exactly this kind of intrusion using his engineering knowledge and ignoring his own safety. He had manually repaired the reactor and saved the colony. The alien species were grateful for his sacrifice, but also terrified by his actions. They could not understand how someone could be both a peaceful engineer and a warrior capable of fighting through military-grade defenses. The same skills that made him excellent at building things had allowed him to destroy the barriers that stood between him and his goal on the diplomatic station orbiting Volf 359. Human ambassador Seo Young-ho had prevented a war between two alien species. The Crimson Federation and the Azure Alliance had been on the verge of conflict over territorial disputes that had lasted for centuries. Neither side would back down, and military forces were already mobilizing. Ambassador Seo had used a combination of diplomatic negotiation and subtle threats to force both sides to accept a peaceful solution. He had revealed that he possessed military intelligence about both species that could devastate their war efforts if made public. His knowledge of their weaknesses had made peace more attractive than war, but the species involved were disturbed by his methods. They could not understand how someone could be both a diplomat working for peace and a person who possessed the information and willingness to destroy them. Ambassador Seo had achieved peace through the threat of war, and neither side knew how to categorize such behavior. Captain Lee Min-ho realized that every human action was being viewed through the lens of alien fear and misunderstanding. When humans helped other species, the aliens wondered about hidden motives. When humans showed kindness, the aliens worried about manipulation. When humans demonstrated knowledge, the aliens feared how that knowledge might be used against them. The crisis deepened when the Galactic Council received intelligence about a new threat approaching from outside known space. Long-range sensors had detected an alien fleet of unknown origin moving toward the galaxy. The ships were massive and appeared to be heavily armed, but they were not responding to any communication attempts. Some species blamed humans for attracting this new threat. They argued that human nature had somehow drawn dangerous attention to the galaxy. Others wondered if the approaching fleet was connected to humanity in some way. Perhaps humans were not from Earth originally, but were advanced scouts for this mysterious force. Captain Lee Min-ho knew that humanity's fate would be decided by how the galaxy responded to this approaching threat. If the alien fleet proved hostile, then human combat abilities might be seen as valuable. If the fleet proved peaceful, then human capacity for violence might be seen as unnecessary and dangerous. The various factions within the Galactic Council were already preparing for different scenarios. The Thakari wanted to recruit humans as soldiers to fight the approaching threat. The Aldari wanted to surrender the humans to the mysterious fleet as a peace offering. The Krix wanted to eliminate humans before they could join forces with the approaching aliens. As reports continued to arrive about the approaching fleet, it became clear that this was no ordinary diplomatic mission. The ships were configured for war, and their approach vector suggested hostile intent. Long-range scans revealed weapon systems that were beyond anything in the galactic arsenal. Captain Lee Min-ho understood that humanity was about to face its greatest test. The galaxy would judge human nature not by peaceful intentions but by performance in crisis. Would human adaptability prove to be the key to galactic survival, or would human unpredictability make them unreliable allies when the stakes were highest? The approaching fleet represented everything that the galaxy feared about the unknown. It was a force that did not fit into established categories that could not be predicted. Or controlled. The irony was not lost on Captain Lee Minho that humanity, which had been feared for similar reasons, might be the only species capable of dealing with such a threat as. The alien fleet drew closer. The galaxy faced a choice that would determine the future of all intelligent life. They could continue to fight among themselves about what humans represented, or they could unite to face the approaching danger. The decision would reveal whether galactic civilization was strong enough to accept diversity or whether fear would destroy them all. Captain Lee Minho looked out at the stars and wondered if humanity would survive long enough to prove their worth to the galaxy. The real test was coming, and it would determine not just humanity's place among the stars, but whether those stars would continue to shine on free civilizations or fall under the shadow of an unknown and hostile force. The galaxy had spent so much time debating whether humans were too dangerous to accept that they had failed to notice a truly dangerous threat approaching from the void. The ultimate irony might be that the species they feared most would be the one they needed most when the real enemy finally arrived. The mystery of the approaching fleet was solved when the first attacks began on the Outer Rim colonies. The aliens called themselves the Void Hunters, and they were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. They had no interest in diplomacy, trade, or coexistence. They existed only to consume and destroy, leaving empty space. Where civilizations had once thrived, the Void Hunters were what every species had feared. Humans might become pure killers without conscience, restraint, or purpose. Beyond destruction, they had no art, no culture, no philosophy beyond the belief that all other life was weakness to be eliminated. They were the dark mirror of what intelligence could become when it chose only violence. As the Void Hunters began their systematic assault on galactic civilization, the carefully specialized species discovered that their greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. The Thrakari warriors fought bravely, but could not adapt when their traditional tactics failed. The Aldari civilians panicked when their few soldiers could not protect them. The Krix workers were helpless when their warrior caste was overwhelmed. The Delph scholars had no solutions when their defenders fell to superior numbers. The entire galactic civilization had been built on the assumption that specialization was the highest form of evolution, but the Void Hunters exploited every weakness that specialization created. But when the Void Hunters attacked the human colony on Proxima Centauri, they encountered something that confused and frustrated them. The humans did not divide into helpless civilians and doomed soldiers. Instead, every human became part of the defense in whatever way was needed. The colony administrator, Kim Minseok, immediately transformed into a military commander, coordinating evacuation and defense efforts. The schoolteacher, Onura, became a tactical analyst, using her knowledge of child psychology to predict enemy behavior. The hospital janitor, Lim Jung-soo, became a saboteur, using his knowledge of building systems to create deadly traps. The Void Hunters had conquered hundreds of worlds. Using the same strategy, overwhelmed the military forces, and the civilian population would surrender. But human civilians did not surrender. They became fighters, medics, engineers, spies, and anything else the situation required. News of the human resistance spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had been preparing to surrender to the Void Hunters began to hope that victory might be possible. The key was not having better weapons or superior numbers, but having people who could become whatever was needed. Colonel Park Won-ho had been a farmer before the war started. He understood soil weather and growing seasons, but when the Void Hunters attacked his agricultural world, he became a guerrilla leader, using his knowledge of terrain and seasons to conduct a campaign that saved 3 star systems. His farming experience taught him patience and the ability to work with natural cycles, skills that translated perfectly to military strategy. Dr. Kim Hyman had spent her career as a pediatrician, caring for sick children with endless patience and gentle hands. But when the Void Hunters used biological weapons against civilian populations, she became a biological warfare expert. Her knowledge of how to heal bodies gave her the knowledge of how to destroy the alien physiology teacher Lee. Sujin had dedicated her life to educating young minds about history, literature, and science, but when the Void Hunters attacked her world, she became a coordinator of both civilian evacuations and military strikes. Her teaching skills made her perfect for organizing complex operations involving thousands of people. The pattern repeated across human space. Every human found a way to contribute to the defense effort that used their existing skills in new ways. The same abilities that made them excellent at peaceful occupations made them effective at war. The galaxy watched in amazement as humanity proved that there was no such thing as a non-combatant in human society, but what impressed the alien observers most was how humans worked together without central command or rigid hierarchy. They seemed to instinctively understand what needed to be done and who was best suited to do it. A baker might find himself leading an engineering team while a university professor coordinated supply lines. The Void Hunters had expected to face either trained soldiers or helpless civilians. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire species that could think and act like soldiers while maintaining the creativity and adaptability of civilians. This combination proved to be their downfall. Ambassador Chun Jisu found herself addressing the Galactic Council once again, but this time the mood was completely different. The species that